Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be trying out and giving you my thoughts on the Kuratake Gansai Tambi Art Nouveau set. I'm also going to be painting a portrait in a style that I stumbled into in my sketchbook recently, and I really wanted to try exploring more. I already had the Gansai Tambi regular set, the full set, and I got this one actually a fair bit ago, but I have been saving it to review on the channel. My first impression is that it has a really good color story. I don't know if this is actually a term in the art world, but I've seen people use it in reference to like eyeshadow palettes and stuff, so it definitely has what I would consider a good color story. Every color goes nicely together. It's very harmonious and it's very complete. There are very light colors, very dark colors, cools, warms, etc. There are some good skin tone adjacent colors, by which I mean they aren't quite skin tones, but they are close enough that you could just slightly adjust them and they would make very nice skin tones, as opposed to needing to mix them from scratch. Gonna be really honest, I love these colors. They are gorgeous. When I eventually buy a house, I am going to just take this box of paints to the paint store to pick out my paint colors. I guarantee that is going to happen because I love every single one of them. They are all just exactly my vibe. I could not love them more. I especially love the very acidic yellow green and the very vibrant orangey red. Especially I love that red with the like steel gray slate blue. That's very, very nice. I really like Art Nouveau and that period of design, and these colors are actually pretty accurate. They're perhaps a little more indicative of what Art Nouveau objects and items look like now, after some fading and age, but they are still pretty good representations of the colors of the time. And even when you look at items from the Art Nouveau period that haven't faded, such as glass, Art Nouveau glass art, or ceramics, the colors are still actually quite accurate. It isn't just like they looked at one or two Alphonse Mucha paintings and we're like, okay, these are the colors we're using. These are actually quite representative of the era of design as a whole. The paints contain a lot of white, so I wanted to try swatching them on black paper as well as on the color swatch sheet on the inside of the lid. They show up really well, especially the third row, top to bottom, shows up very, very well. It's a really good palette on its own. It stands on its own feet really, really well, but there are no repeats between this and the original palette, so you can either buy this one on its own, and it will be very usable on its own, but you can also buy it if you already have the other one and you won't be paying for stuff you already have, which is very nice. I think I should probably point out, these are not, a lot of people say they're just watercolors. They're not Western watercolors. These are Gansai paints, and they are different. They're meant to be used differently. You can use them like Western watercolors. You won't really have much of a problem, but they are going to behave different, they're made different, and they're meant to be used in a different way. I am thinking of maybe making a video kind of explaining Gansai paints in more depth, because I haven't seen a lot of English videos on it, and the ones that do talk about the Kuretake Gansai paints the information is not there. There is no information. It's not good. So I've been thinking of making a video of my own, explaining them and their differences, but the basic difference is that they are made with a glue, not with gum arabic. It's traditionally an animal glue, like a rabbit skin glue, but the the Kuratake Gansai paints are do not contain hide glue. They have an alternative glue that behaves like hide glue, so they do not contain an animal product. At least not in the glue, not in the binder. I don't know about the colors, I have no idea. I've had my original set for a very long time, and one thing that made me hesitant to use it, because I had it for a long time, but I didn't really use it for much. I would use it in my sketchbook, you know, every once in a while, and I couldn't quite get a grasp on how I wanted to use them. They never quite behaved in a way that I liked, but having used them on watercolor paper for like the first time just now, all the problems I was having are just not there. They just almost completely go away. The biggest thing that I had trouble with was the paint going down evenly on just sketchbook paper and getting very shiny edges. Because they're glue-based, they tend to get a very shiny edge if you apply them in more than a very light wash on ordinary sketchbook paper. And that effect is hugely diminished on watercolor paper. Hugely diminished. It is basically a non-issue. It is still happening to a certain extent, but not nearly as much, and it's so much less noticeable. It doesn't look gross and cheap the way it does on sketchbook paper. So if you have these paints, this brand of paints, and you've used them in sketchbooks and you've just not liked that, it's just not a problem on watercolor paper. I'm sad I haven't tried them, or like really tried them before this. In regards to the patchy and uneven tone, I would say that's still a thing on watercolor paper, but it doesn't feel the same. On sketchbook paper, the patchiness looks a lot more like cauliflowering, which is when Western watercolors sort of dry unevenly, and you get this very strange pattern in it that can be used to a great effect if you do it intentionally, but when you don't want it to happen, it looks really bad. And so it looked a lot like that. On watercolor paper, the effect is much hazier and softer, and I find that I actually really, really like it. I was playing in my sketchbook. I did this over in my sketchbook when I did those experimental portraits. I did it over a base coat of a very staining watercolor, and I loved the faintly hazy, slightly patchy look. It looked dreamy and more like it was a dimly lit room, like a painting of someone in a dimly lit area, rather than an accident or something that wasn't happening on purpose. And it gave them this harmonious sort of translucent effect that is very different from Western watercolors. With Western watercolors, when there's a translucent effect, it's like the paper is glowing through, whereas this felt more like the colors were glowing through each other. Now, this is the first time I've done one of these portraits on watercolor paper with fully Gansai paints, and you know, and it's only, you know, this really the second time I've done one of these portraits in this style. So there are definitely things I would change about my approach, but I am so happy with this painting. The colors, the way they interact, the way they layer. I want to point out that these paints actually layer really, really nicely. I was kind of worried about them reactivating because they reactivate in the pan differently from Western watercolors, and I was worried that they would lift or bleed into each other, as I've kind of had happen on sketchbook paper, but on watercolor paper, I didn't really have much of a problem. When I applied it very, very thickly in certain areas to get a very dark color, they did reactivate on the paper a little bit. But it wasn't too much of an issue as long as I was careful. And that's just a thing in Western watercolors anyway. It's an effect I'm used to. Yeah, in that vein, I would have waited to paint the hair a little bit longer so that it was the last thing I did, because it's the darkest thing on the painting. The paint is the thickest there. So I would have waited to do that until I was certain I was done with the skin. Aside from that, I also would have done the shadows first. I didn't know if the paint was going to lift or not, or reactivate and get weird and patchy. And now that I know it doesn't, I think I would have painted the shadows in first a little bit darker than I wanted them, and then gone over all of that with the skin tone to make it more harmonious. And so I definitely want to do more of these styles of portraits, these faintly Art Nouveau with a faintly impressionistic color approach. I want to do more of these. I really, really do. I really like them. These paints are very interesting to work with. They are very subtly different than watercolors. So it's not a huge learning curve. It's not like shockingly different like with gouache, or I don't know how I assume it would be going to oils, because they are translucent and they are capable of being layered, and they are water-based. I can't really describe it, but it wasn't very hard to adjust to them. It was just a little like, oh, you work this way. Okay, cool. Oh, this works a little bit different. So it was challenging, but not so challenging that it wasn't fun and that it was stressful. It was very relaxing. One thing these paints did do is that they made it feel much more comfortable to paint in a very loose style. I paint in a very, very precise, finicky, persnickety style. I'm very, very careful and cautious. And these, I just like how they layer more in a loose style. I think something about the haziness of that white pigment makes me like it more. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that I really enjoyed working with these paints, and I really enjoyed using these colors. I think the painting turned out dreamy and misty and just really, really wonderful. I'm really, really happy with it, despite all those little changes that I would make in the future, having finished this painting. I'm still very, very happy with it. None of these things stop me from enjoying this piece of work I've done. I really like how I was able to really strike that balance I've been reaching for with colored pencils. In the past, I tended to end up using them as a crutch to fix mistakes, and it never led to desirable results. It basically never covered up the mistake very well, and it always left a waxy shine to the top of the painting that made it stand out even more than it would have if I just left it. But in this way, I'm actually using them to add something beneficial to the painting rather than just try to take away a problem. I really like the subtle hatching to add a touch of color here, a bit of shadow here, a little bit of texture. It's something I've done here and there. I've played with a little bit, but this is the first time I think I've really gone into a painting knowing I wanted to do that throughout the whole painting. Just add a little bit of line work with a little bit of colored pencil. I do think it offers me a question moving forward with my art and my art style, because when I did the rose painting, I was also very, very happy with that style as well. And I am not certain where I want to go with this. I don't know if I want to try and merge these styles of the more detailed stylistic eyes with this style of painting, or if I want to keep them separate and do both, or switch to one or the other. I'm not certain yet. I know that I want to make more paintings like this. I know this is not the only kind of painting I ever want to do again. I know both of these things. Perhaps when I get into digital art, I'll end up doing that more stylized eye in my digital art, which would be cool, because it being digital art, it's going to change my style anyway. Why not go the whole hog with it and just go crazy different? So yeah, that's definitely going to be food for thought for me, but I'm very happy with this painting. I love it, and I'm very happy with these paints. If you enjoyed the painting, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the review, like, subscribe, notification bell, all of that, and leave a comment if you're feeling saucy. I love to get comments, and I try to respond to everyone I get, as long as it hasn't been like months since I posted the video. I might not respond to that, but but I try to respond to every comment I get, and I will see you next time.